All right, so this is the last study that we have for today, and it's about the effects of emotional intelligence and gender on workplace interpersonal conflict and additionally counterproductive work behavior. And the questions here are just looking what is the relationship first between interpersonal conflict and counterproductive work behavior? And then two, does emotional intelligence negatively moderate the relationship between interpersonal conflict and counterproductive work behavior? And then finally, does gender play a role in the strength of emotional intelligence as a moderator? And the study was conducted in Pakistan and specifically in their media, information technology, and telecommunications sectors because it's had rapid growth over the past few years. And the authors noted that, with the rapid growth comes a potential for related organizational issues with the growth. And additionally, past studies have shown that due to Pakistan's more patriarchal society, women are subjected to more tense work environments and may utilize emotional intelligence as a strength for their benefit to get for work-related outcomes. And so this study gathered 300 employees from these companies with 193 respondents accurately completing the survey. And they measured interpersonal conflict, counterproductive work behavior, emotional intelligence, and gender with previously validated measures. And what they found here was that interpersonal conflict was positively correlated to counterproductive work behavior, both individually and at an organizational level. So the more interpersonal conflicts, the more likely people will deviate from normal productive work behaviors at the workplace. They also found that there's a negative correlation between emotional intelligence and interpersonal conflict, suggesting that more emotional intelligence leads to less interpersonal conflict. And then further, emotional intelligence moderated and provided a buffering effect on the relationship between interpersonal conflict and counterproductive work behavior. And then they also found gender played a significant role in this study. There was a three-way interaction between emotional intelligence, interpersonal conflict, and gender. In predicting counterproductive work behavior. And the interaction between emotional intelligence and interpersonal conflict on counterproductive work behavior was stronger for women than men. And so in other words, women with higher emotional intelligence made the effects of interpersonal conflict weaker on counterproductive work behavior in comparison to men with higher emotional intelligence. So a key takeaway here is the kind of benefit of emotional intelligence and noting that higher emotional intelligence can allow employees to respond more thoughtfully to conflict, which may help reduce conflict in the long term. So giving employees and leaders the tools to become more emotionally intelligent may be a smart course of action for in our case, for consultants and for our services. So yeah, I found this interesting in general. Seems pretty logical, pretty straightforward. You would think that emotional intelligence would help reduce interpersonal conflict, but interested to hear what you all think.
It does sort of, I mean, this is like confirmation bias, but it's like confirming like what I already thought, right? That higher EQ skills will lead to like being able to manage interpersonal conflicts more constructively, right?
Right.
Okay.
Correct. Can you see the slide without?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I can't see the chat too. I just saw your message. But yeah, so interpersonal conflict positively correlated with counterproductive work behavior, which you would think would be the case. Emotional intelligence kind of buffers this effect between interpersonal conflicts and or it reduces interpersonal conflict. So which would reduce counterproductive work behavior. And then in this case, gender played a role. Women had stronger emotional intelligence and had stronger effect on reducing interpersonal conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because emotional intelligence would encompass like being able to talk about your emotions and acknowledge them. And in order, I feel like when people are in conflict, a lot of times it's because we're not acknowledging how we actually feel or what the impact is from one's behavior on us. Like we're not taking the next step of like talking about it and engaging in a dialogue. But people with higher emotional intelligence would be able to kind of articulate their emotions and the effects of actions on their emotions. So yeah, I mean, this is great. It makes sense to me. And like the gender role, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Finish your thought.
I was just thinking, you know, the gender role, I've heard that before as well, you know, and it's again, like kind of confirming that notion that I already had. I wonder why, right? I wonder like where that comes from. Is it from just, you know, the historical context of like a male's role in society versus a female's role in society? Is it that, or, you know, I wonder what leads to that. That's all.
I feel like with regards to that, Sarah, that still has a lot to do with how we're socialized. You know, the gender differences. I mean, and I don't have any empirical research or anything to back that up, but I feel that it has a lot to do with how we're still socialized. And I think it's getting better where now parents are understanding that it's okay, you know, to allow their little boys to be sad or to cry and to express, you know, feelings of sadness and those sorts of things. Whereas it's been normalized for females to be able to express those things. And I think it's getting better. But so I keep thinking about giving leaders tools to become more emotionally intelligent in the workplace. And so I'm thinking about, say, like different types of workplaces. And I see where in some that this would, like, say in an educational setting, like for a university, yeah, I think that would be probably pretty easy to do some trainings and things like that, because I think that environment is conducive to growing and learning and trying to do things in different ways. But then I look at it, a completely different industry, like say, like the automotive industry. I mean, where people are working in plants or, you know, and things like that. And so the way they communicate, the way they relate to one another is very different. And I just wonder if like a leadership of an organization like that would be as interested in investing the time and the resources and tools like this to make their employees, you know, more emotionally intelligent and aware. I feel like the industry and those norms in that industry would have a lot to do with whether or not they'd be willing to do this.
Yeah, I mean, yes, 100%, Tony. I feel like what you're speaking to also relates to like our organization, right? I mean, but we see all different industries, from those that you speak of that maybe, you know, plants and like factories or construction workers that maybe you wouldn't necessarily think would be willing to engage in services like this, but they do once it becomes bad enough to where their employees are counterproductive, right? In the overall, like the grand scheme of things of the company or the organization. So I would say it's like, yes, I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, it's not, maybe it's just that like in specific industries, they like would wait longer. They would wait until things got so bad before engaging in education or training, such as emotional intelligence, right? Whereas like some might be more, oh, let's be preventative in this education or this training or these services versus waiting. But yeah, that's a great point there. Wonder if there's a study on that.
And just like tying back to, I believe last week when we're talking, like discussing how certain students or certain people were more, I think like psychology students had higher emotional intelligence compared to like engineering and medical students, if I'm remembering correctly. And also how you guys are talking about the difference between genders and how you're raised can also affect, your emotional intelligence. So I kind of, when I'm thinking about the workplace and what Tony's saying, I wonder if you really can have workshops or trainings to teach emotional intelligence as much as just better communication skills. Because I wonder, like, how do people grow their emotional intelligence? Can that really be done in the workplace, or can you just teach your employees how to communicate more clearly and be a little more understanding of each other? So I'm kind of just thinking about that on my end, like, how can you teach, or what would that look like in the workplace? How would you be able to help your employees have higher emotional intelligence?
Alexis, I think you just said it. You just said it right there with communication skills, like, enhancing one's communication skills and awareness of their emotions and the effects that certain behaviors have on their emotions. Like, that's all communication skills, and that's how you would enhance your emotional intelligence, I would say.
That's what I'm thinking too. Yeah, I feel like you would just have to target more of the communication. That's what I guess that's all I could really think of when it comes to the workplace and making it a more positive environment. Because I mean, men and women do communicate very differently, and that is it's a sign of emotional intelligence. So I guess I just wonder, are we targeting communication and that's it? Or is there something else that we can do within workshops with organizations to, have people grow in that side?
I think it's all about like cognitive behavioral skills too, like understanding that our thoughts and our emotions lead to our behavior. Like, if we're able to understand that process, that we think something, we feel something, we do something, that's going to help our emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah, I think that it relates to, I was thinking when you're saying that with kind of Tony's point earlier too, about if you have different industries that probably, most likely would be more predominantly male, and that could have inherent in their culture more toxic masculinity traits, like having preventative trainings that can address these things I imagine wouldn't occur in that. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier. It would be more reactive rather than preventative. But I think I wonder how framing trainings as, as more communication, as these, you're increasing maybe, leadership skills, or, the different, rather than framing it as, you're increasing emotional intelligence. I wonder how that would impact their ability to want to take on a training or something that would help them raise those skills or not. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, I think, Noah, you and Alexis, I think you all are absolutely right. Probably framing it from the communication aspect would make it much more palatable and attractive to a broader range of industries. Because it's easy even to quantify, like, how much improving communication could result in improved productivity and things like that. And so, yeah, I think that might be the key to being able to get in and do more preventative or proactive work, as opposed to coming in after, things have gotten really bad.